My name is Mike. I'm a single office worker in his 30s, working for a manufacturer. We are particularly busy in end of every month, and that day too, I did some overtime for a couple of hours. I got on the train to make my way home. While I was taking a breather, what a long day, my ride stopped at the station one before my home station. I jumped up from the seat to get off from the train. I got off this station because the supermarket in my home station closes early. So I usually stop by the supermarket K in the station on those overtime days. They are open until late. I can do quick grocery shopping and not too far from my home either, so I can simply walk home. I don't hate cooking, but I rarely cook at home after the busy long day. I am usually too tired and just want to go sleep, as I would have another early morning. Cook at home means dirty cookwares and dishes, and I don't have enough energy to clean those up after. It means I would come home to the messy kitchen after another long day. This is why I usually go to the prepackaged deli meal. As a bonus point, those deli meal often get discounted in the late at night, especially when I go there after the overtime. Half price stickers are on every meal. I can get a fancy hamburger set for under $10 or a pre-packed meal for around $6. No cooking, no cleanup, and cheap. I cannot complain for these good deals. Wow, my favorite pepper steak is only $4. I almost said out loud as I tossed a pack of it into my shopping basket at Supermarket K that day. I was feeling like vegetables. I picked up 2 pre-packed Chinese vegetable deli meals. Then I added steamed rice, and yes, cannot miss dumplings. I was tempted to grab a beer, but since it was late already, I decided to skip the nightcap and go for a bottle of soft drink instead. With all of those, it would still be under $20. I'm quite pleased with myself for my budgeting. All of 4 self-checkout were full, so I was waiting for my turn. I was observing other customers at the checkout, all male in late hour. The guy at the checkout one was young, student-looking, middle-aged man at the 2. I was wondering if he was single office worker just like myself. At the checkout 3, old man, almost looked too old to shop in this late. His wife might have passed away. I let my imagination go freely. You cannot know the truth about strangers anyways. Checkout 4 was a bit hidden spot at the back, and I found an only female customer at the moment. She was quite thin, wearing a torn jacket and shoes with holes in them. She looks pretty worn out, I thought to myself, trying to get a glimpse of her face. However, she was wearing her hat so low and her face was hard to see. Well, not my business anyways, I thought. Then checkout 4 opened up, so I went to there to pay for my meals. As I was about to pay, I noticed a yogurt with a discount sticker left all alone on the platform for paid items. That woman must leave it, I thought, and was about to chase after her, but I couldn't just leave without pay for my own checkout, so I hesitated. Oh well, I can leave my unbought items with a shop clerk. They'll understand if I explain the situation. I looked around to leave my basket with a shop clerk, but it was late, and I couldn't find anyone around. I was frustrated. I had 2 choices. I could hurry, finish my checkout, and run after her, or put my unbought items back on the shelf, then chase her. Both options would be about the same. I quickly decided to finish my checkout first. I rushed through the items on the self-checkout, fastest ever in my life, grabbed my shopping and that yogurt, ran out of the store. Should I try the station direction? Or she could be a local, so maybe the residential area. I slightly regretted embarking on this nearly reckless mission to return the yogurt to its owner. It might have been more sensible to simply hand the yogurt to a shop clerk and say, "Someone left this." But the woman, from what I could see at a distance, was in quite a worn out and very thin. She surely needed to eat as much as she could. With that thought, as I scurried here and there, looking for any sign of her, I spotted a woman crouching on the sidewalk. Could it be her? I approached her. The oversized knit hat covering her ears, the torn jacket. This must be that woman. I was glad to manage finding the person I was delivering to, but seeing her crouched down made me worried if she was feeling unwell. I approached, squatted down to her level, and asked, "Hey, are you okay?" She slightly opened her eyes to look at me and opened her mouth as if to say something, but then, she suddenly collapsed towards me. "Whoa, hey, are you okay?" I couldn't help but shout. but it was clear she wasn't okay, so I panicked and pulled out my smartphone to dial 911. But the woman leaning against me weakly touched my phone, trying to stop me from making the call. Then, in a faint voice, she said, I'm okay. Really? No way. You're clearly not. Let's call an ambulance. I insisted, but she responded, I just felt dizzy. It happens a lot. Again in that frail voice. At that moment, her knit hat, which she had pulled down over her eyes, slipped off and fell to the ground. I could see her face clearly now, and I was shocked. What? Caitlin? Is that you, Caitlin? I knew that woman. More than just I knew her so very well. Despite being thin and worn, her features and voice were unmistakable. Mike. Caitlin. That woman said my name. Yes, Caitlin was my high school girlfriend. We were in the same class, and we spent a lot of time together from sophomore year until just before our graduation, so there was no way I could forget her. When I decided to go to a college in another state, we knew we wouldn't see each other much. After a long talk, we decided we're too young to settle down with one person. We should follow our own paths. And we broke up. You know, same old story. Anyway, your health comes first. Let's call an ambulance. While supporting the collapsed Caitlin, I tried to operate my smartphone again. But Caitlin said, it's okay. I feel a bit better leaning on you, Mike. Her complexion seemed a bit better than when she had collapsed. Believing what Caitlin said, I decided to wait and see how she felt for a while. Caitlin tried to get up in a hurry from leaning against me, but I told her, take it easy. If it's easier to lean on me, let's stay like this for a bit. After hearing that, Caitlin bit her lip slightly and said, okay. Tears were welling up in her eyes. I couldn't help but ask, Caitlin, what is going on? You have lost so much weight, and why you're wearing torn clothes. She might not want to tell me, her ex, but I was too worried not to ask. Then Caitlin said, Mike, I'm sorry, and started to cry. I hurriedly said, no, don't cry. Crying uses energy, and you might get fainted again. It would be good if we could find somewhere for you to rest. And then, Caitlin's phone started ringing, but she hesitated to answer the call with troubled expression on her face. Hey, don't you want to answer the phone? If you are not feeling up to talking, I can explain to them. As I said this, Caitlin seemed to make up her mind and pulled out a phone from her pocket. Caitlin's phone was old-fashioned flip phone. She flipped it open and pressed the call button, putting the phone to her ear. Hello, she spoke in a quiet voice. Then, from the phone, a man's shouting voice came through loud enough for me to overhear. Caitlin, where the hell are you? Stop messing around. Caitlin, looking frightened, replied, I'm sorry. I fainted from anemia on my way home. Then, you fainted again. Pathetic. Just hurry up and come home. You're causing me a trouble. I hate waiting. The man's voice continued. I fought with my urge, wanting to grab the phone from Caitlin and retort to the man on the other end, but thinking it might lead to trouble that could further burden Caitlin, I chose to stay silent and just watch the situation. Caitlin, with a frail voice, said, okay, and hung up the phone. I quickly asked, was that person you live with or something? That sounded pretty harsh. Yeah, someone I live with. Caitlin answered. So, is that like your boyfriend or something? I asked, and Caitlin nodded slightly. After a moment of silence, I couldn't help but say, sorry if I'm being nosy, but hearing that conversation, it's weird to me that he wasn't worried about you fainting from anemia and just said, you're causing me trouble. Caitlin then murmured, looking down, I guess you're right. I've been so confused about what's weird and what's not. Without thinking, I blurted out, how about you rest at my place until you're feeling stable? It's not safe for you to be out like this if you're still feeling shaky. But then I hurriedly added, don't get me wrong. I don't have any bad intention. Really, just until you feel better, and it's not safe for you to be out in this condition. Plus, if it gets too late, your boyfriend might get even more upset. So it's better if you recover quickly. Caitlin looked at me, surprised, and said, really? If I go home now, even if I feel sick, I'll have to do chores, so that would really help. I thought to myself that there seemed to be a lot of issues, but my belief was that if someone's in trouble, you help them, no matter if they're an ex or not. Let's call a taxi. I booked a taxi with my smartphone to pick us up. They arrived in about 5 minutes, and Caitlin and I got in and headed to my house. Caitlin could walk and talk on her own, but said she still felt dizzy. Given how thin she was, I was worried if she was eating properly. When I asked, she said, "We don't have much money, and whatever little I buy mostly gets eaten by my boyfriend." What Caitlin had bought at the supermarket was a single half-price packed lunch, and that discounted yogurt, which I was trying to deliver and return to her by myself. This packed lunch is for his dinner, and the yogurt is for my meal. He gets angry if I don't come home quickly because he's starving. Caitlin explained. "Is that because you don't want to eat much, or because you're not allowed to eat?" I asked. "It's because we didn't have money," she said. I rummaged through my pantry at home. Got some pot noodles, microwave rice, and some chicken soup. "Anything you can eat, Caitlin?" I asked her. "No, you don't have to." Caitlin was hesitant, but I insisted. "Warm chicken soup might be easier to eat when you're feeling weak." And started cooking. "Eat as much as you can. Don't force yourself." I put a bowl of chicken soup and offered it to Caitlin. She initially hesitated but gradually began to slurp down the soup and eventually finished the meal. It's been a while since I ate so much. It was delicious, and I ate it all. "Thank you so much," Caitlin said, looking happy. Eating something warm seemed to have improved her complexion significantly. "It looks like my anemia has gotten better. I feel energized," Caitlin said happily, but then her expression turned sad. "I should probably get going before I get scolded." And she looked down. Without thinking, I blurted out, "Do you really have to go back? If you're okay with it, you can stay here." After I said that, I suddenly start worrying about what would happen if Caitlin's boyfriend showed up and things escalated. But I also thought it wouldn't be good to cause Caitlin any harm. "Thank you. I've made up my mind. I don't want to trouble you, so I'll go home for now." "Thank you," Caitlin said, then began to get ready to leave. In a rush, I said, "If you're ever in trouble, contact me anytime," and handed her a piece of paper with my phone number. The reason it was my phone number was because I figured we couldn't text with Caitlin's flip phone, and she was about to leave before I could write down an email address. "Thank you." Caitlin carefully tucked the paper into her bag's pocket. "Well, I'm off then," she said as she opened the door to leave, but I didn't want her to go. Unable to hold her back, I stood there, without saying anything, just watching her go. I couldn't sleep much after that, worrying about Caitlin. But new day starts without any mercy, and I had to go to work. Rubbing my sleepy eyes, I went to work as usual. "Mike, don't show up looking so sleepy. We don't need anyone here who isn't motivated, so go home." My boss, Mr. Thompson, who is always sarcastic to me, greeted me with that first thing in the morning, causing me to panic. "I'm sorry, sir. I'm not sleepy. I'm ready to crack on," I said, trying to pep myself up. But the truth was, I hadn't slept much. "Well, whatever. I'm not expected anything from you. Even if you were well rested and at your best, you'd still be a screw-up. Good luck," Mr. Kanamori told me. After Mr. Thompson left, a junior colleague, Hirai, who had overheard the conversation, asked me, "Mike, you look pale. You couldn't sleep well." "So," I honestly replied, "just couldn't sleep, thinking about stuff." Hirai joked, "Love sickness." So I replied, "Exactly. Maybe I've hit my puberty late. In my 30s. To make fun of myself." Then I sat at my desk, facing the computer to work on documents that needed to be submitted today. Sigh. I couldn't help but sigh. I found my thoughts constantly drifting to Caitlin. It wasn't that I still had feelings for my ex, but seeing her so thin and in tattered clothes made me worried, of course. I wondered if her boyfriend had said anything terrible to her afterward. Is she eating better today? After he mailed the documents to my boss, I felt a brief moment of relief that work was done for now. But then, I realized something. Oh no, I sent it to the wrong person. It's supposed to be sent to Manager Johnson, but I sent it to Mr. Thompson. I panicked. I checked again, and I had indeed sent it to the wrong person. Getting chewed out by Mr. Thompson later was inevitable. In a hurry, I resent it to Manager Johnson and sent an apology message to Mr. Thompson. Just then, I got called by Manager Johnson. "Is Mike here? I need to see you for a moment." I felt a chill run down my spine. I'm going to get reprimanded for the misdirected message. Nervously, I apologized to Manager Asahi first. I'm really sorry about the misdirected message. Manager Johnson looked puzzled and said, misdirected message? What are you talking about? The documents I accidentally sent. I explained. Huh? I've been in the CEO's office until just now. I don't know anything about that. What's that all about? Manager Johnson replied. The CEO's office, you say? I mumbled back awkwardly. Calm down and think again. Manager Johnson couldn't know that I sent the message to Mr. Thompson. I wasn't myself that day to think about it. Then Manager Johnson said, anyway, the CEO wants to see you. Head to the CEO's office right away. Me. The CEO wants to see me. I had never been called by the CEO before. I wondered if Mr. Thompson had reported my mistake to the CEO, and I was about to be reprimanded. Or perhaps I had done something even worse than missending mail. My spine chilled again. What should I do? As I walked nervously towards the CEO's office and entered, saying, excuse me, the CEO's expression turned serious as soon as I stepped in, heightening my anxiety. This is bad. This is bad. This is bad. I was panicked in my mind. I must have messed up big time. What if I get fired? Or, considering Mr. Thompson really doesn't like me, it's possible that information about my being an unreliable employee finally reached the CEO, and today's going to be my last day. With that thought, I stood silent, waiting for the CEO to speak. Let's get straight to the point. The CEO began. I gulped. This is bad. This is bad. I'm getting fired. I'm getting fired. Those thoughts started looping in my mind. I cannot thank you enough, the CEO said. I was taken aback, but then immediately thought, he's expressing gratitude for my work as an employee, but still going to fire me. Thank you for everything, sir. It's been such an honor to work in here, I said to the CEO, nearly in tears. The CEO then said, what are you talking about? You sound like you're leaving. Confused, and I cautiously asked, am I not being fired today? The CEO laughed loudly. Why would you think that? We need you here. And then, I'm counting on you in the future. For Caitlin's sake, too, the CEO added. I beg your pardon. I blurted out in surprise. What is Caitlin's name coming up? As I stood there confused, the CEO began to explain. Last night, well past midnight, Caitlin suddenly contacted us and came back home. She had run away from home and been out of reach. Poor thing, she was so thin. It was close call. Her clothes were tattered too. We were all shocked. And she has come back home because of you. I was blown away. Caitlin is the CEO's daughter. Thinking about that, when Caitlin and I dated in high school, she hardly ever talked about her father. My dad's always busy with work and lives abroad, so I haven't seen him much. I remember Caitlin told me at the time, I never would have guessed you two were dating. When she was in high school, I was on an assignment overseas and didn't see her at all. Plus, I was already separated with her mother by then. Our last names were different. You see, I'm Davis, right? Caitlin would have been Smith when you were dating her. I listened to him explain, still confused. Sure, it would have been easier to understand if the CEO and Caitlin had the same last name, but this was a twist I hadn't expected, leaving me still shaken. Being so focused on my work, my wife and I drifted apart, leading to our divorce. But now, we've come closer and live together again. Well, our story is not important here. A few years ago, Caitlin said she was dating a guy she met, and she left home. After that, we lost all contact with her. Her phone was disconnected. My wife and I were worried sick. We couldn't know she was doing all right since we hadn't heard anything from her. Then, out of the blue, she came back home last night after 2 years, and we were shocked by how thin she was and her ragged appearance. The CEO continued excitedly. Apparently, the guy she was with turned out to be selfish and arrogant. According to Caitlin, he was nice for the first year they lived together, but gradually showed his true colors. She wanted to leave him but found it hard to return home after running away against our wishes. She could have come back any time without worry. Anyway, after being helped by you last night and talking to you, Caitlin realized something was wrong with her situation and decided to break up with him. She resolved to come back home and apologize to us. Not that we ever wanted her to apologize. As CEO told me his story, pieces came together in my head and it all started to make sense. I had been worried sick about Caitlin since last night, so hearing she had left that dangerous boyfriend was a huge relief. Is Caitlin still at home and safe? Is she eating well? I asked. Yes, she's at our home. Her mother cooked meal for her. Fortunately, it seems the guy she was with isn't going to track us down or cause any more troubles. He was abusive and spent all her money. He got her smartphone disconnected because it was too expensive, leaving her with the old flip phone. I have already talked with my lawyer friend and make sure he wouldn't trouble Koyuki in future anymore. The CEO told me. I was still worried, but his words provided some relief. Caitlin told us she couldn't stop thinking about you, regretting for breaking up with you. She was crying about it last night. I can officially ask you to get back together with my daughter. That would be appropriate as your CEO, but I wanted you to know that I fully support you two being in touch. She's been eating well and is safe at our home now. The CEO said that. Wow. I'm so happy to hear she's been thinking of me. I've always regretted our breakup, always wondering why we had to end up like that. I've tried moving on, but nothing felt right. Now, I've been single for so long. I shared my honest feelings with him. That's wonderful to hear. I'm happy, not just for my daughter, but knowing our company has some decent employee like you. The CEO expressed his gratitude. Well, that's too kind. Especially to hear you say that about the company, too. I thought I was on the verge of being fired for all the mistakes I've made and for not being favored by Mr. Thompson. I responded, flustered. What are you talking about? Mr. Thompson's been a compulsive liar, and we all know about that. In fact, it was my mistake to give someone like him, not trustworthy person, this higher position. I'm truly sorry. I've been thinking about demoting him, and now might be the right time. I felt a surge of unexpected support. Actually, I've been considering promoting you to a supervisor position next month. Manager Johnson has spoken highly of your work, and despite Mr. Thompson's constant bad-mouthing, the problem lies with him, not you. He will be demoted. Shocked by the sudden turn, but I replied, thank you so much. I'll do my absolute best in my new role. That evening, after finishing work and settling down at home, my phone rang. Normally, I hesitate to answer calls from unknown numbers, but something made me to pick up the phone this time. Mike, I heard a woman's voice. It was Caitlin. Mixed feelings of happiness to hear from her and concern for her well-being, but I asked, are you feeling okay now? When I asked, she replied, yeah, after coming back home and eating 3 meals a day of mom's cooking, I've started feeling better. I was relieved to hear that. After sharing that I had heard about Caitlin's situation from her father, CEO Davis, she explained more detail. I'm really sorry for worrying you. The guy I was living with, Brandon, backed down once my dad got his lawyer involved. When he was told I wanted to break up, he agreed without much fuss, so it was easier to separate than I thought. I've decided to stay with my parents for now. My stuff is still at his place, but we're arranging to go get it with a bodyguard my dad hired when Brandon isn't there. He's mean with his words but not the type to get physically violent, just to be safe though. I see. I'd love to be your bodyguard, but I'm not exactly the physical type, so it's probably better to leave it to the professionals. I feel a bit useless. Anyways, I'm glad things are moving in a positive direction, I said. Caitlin denied me, saying, Mike, you're not useless. You saved me when I was at my lowest. I'm here because of you. Caitlin thanked me. I've always regretted breaking up with you right before we graduated high school. When we were graduating our high school, I had tried dating someone else in uni, but it felt wrong, and it didn't last. Looking back, I might have been comparing everyone to you. But as a grown-up, I thought it wasn't right to stay single and at home forever. That's when Brandon appeared. He seemed kind and sincere at first, so I trusted him. And you might have heard from my dad, but my parents divorced when I was in middle school. Though they were living separately, they reconciled a few years ago, and Dad moved back in with us. I'd lived without him for over 10 years during my adolescence, and suddenly living with him again was something I didn't want. Not because he was awful, just wasn't used to it. Caitlin shared her story. So, the timing of wanting to move out and meeting him just mashed up. I nodded in understanding. Yeah. My parents strongly opposed moving in with him. In hindsight, it's obvious why. When I told him my parents wanted to meet him if we were to live together, He flatly refused, saying it wasn't necessary. Plus, we started by splitting rent and utilities, but then he stopped contributing. I had to cover everything with my salary and savings, which quickly ran out. He'd send me out to buy his meals with whatever little money we had, timing it to get discounted items. When I had a little extra, I'd buy yogurt for myself. I couldn't see my situation clearly and just focused on getting by each day. Caitlin said that. Reflecting on it, it felt like fate that I ended up delivering Caitlin's yogurt. I was so determined to leave home that I started living with him against my parents' wishes, convinced I could never ask them for help. But talking to you yesterday made me realize it's not right to live like that. Caitlin expressed her gratitude. But I haven't done much. You escaped that situation with your own strength, I replied. When I replied, Caitlin said the following: because I got to see you, Mike, someone I've always wanted to see again. It gave me the strength to leave, strength I needed all the time. Thank you for helping me, Caitlin said with gratitude. In that moment, I blurted out, it is a little bit embarrassing to look back now. I want to continue helping you. Please let me be your knight in shining armor. Caitlin replied, I'm so happy to hear that, Mike. Thank you. Her voice sounded like filled with tears. A year later, I was visiting C.O. Davis's home on Sunday. Not for work, but more for a personal reason. Mr. Davis, Mrs. Smith, I'd like to ask your permission to marry Caitlin. I promise I will make her happy. I said to C.O. Davis, Caitlin's father, and her mother, bowing deeply. It's truly a blessing to have someone as trustworthy as you become Caitlin's partner. We're counting on you. And as a manager at the company too, Mike, C.O. Davis responded. I'm so relieved. Caitlin's health and weight have returned to normal, and she's completely healthy now, thanks to you, Mike. Caitlin's mother added. Mike and Caitlin exchanged smiles. After that day near the supermarket when I helped Caitlin, who had collapsed, we eventually started dating again and smoothly nurtured our love. This time we promised never to let go of each other's hands, like we did our immature teenage days. The wedding and official registration are still to come, but I vowed eternal love on that day and tightly held Caitlin's hand under the table.